In today's episode of The Written Compass, I have the pleasure of talking to Laura Wieck, founder and CEO of BodyMind Coaching. In this episode, we're going to dive deep into her brand new book, The BodyMind Method. And she is a dear friend, a colleague. She's been my coach. I've supported her with her book. And we're going to really dive into what it is like to live aligned and embodied both in your business and in your life, and what someone who is a business owner, CEO, 7+ figure company, how they write their book and what that gets to look like. So we're so excited you're here. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Written Compass. Okay, y'all, you need to get excited because we have a very, 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 very special guest today. I am excited because not only is she a dear friend of mine, but she has also been my coach and just very much a part of the reason that I am even here doing this work today and supporting people in the way that I am, the reason I'm a coach. We have the amazing Laura Wieck from BodyMind Coaching. Welcome, Laura.
Hi, Shayna. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for such a beautiful introduction.
Yay. Well, I'm going to introduce you a little bit more. And I love talking about Laura. I love introducing people to Laura. I'm just so excited you exist on the planet. Laura is very special because she really comes at all things in life, her work and just everything she does in a very different way. So we understand culturally, right, that the brain gets praised and becomes the center for so many things. And particularly around healing and transformation, there's a lot of conversation in the world about mindset, right? And you, Laura, you've really spent your career helping others connect to a different kind of wisdom, which is the wisdom within their body, and really learning how to fully live life connected. And over the past 7 years, Laura has been growing this amazing thing called BodyMind Coaching into a world-class coach training program and organization. And she's gotten to work with, including myself, hundreds of holistic practitioners around the world to incorporate the BodyMind Method, which is what we're going to talk about a little bit today, into their services to better support clients while building healthy, wealthy, and aligned businesses for themselves. And most recently, I'm going to celebrate with you because I don't know if you've officially, can I make a
Sure, go for it.
Celebration of the latest little thing you've accomplished, certified in? Can I say that?
Oh, yes, please. I was like, where is this going? But go for it.
Nothing sinister. I was just like, as I was saying it, I was like, wait, am I approved to say this? Most recently, Laura has become a certified equity-centered leader. And along with that, it's just, I love how this is all happening all at once. You've recently published your book, The BodyMind Method, a 4-part framework for embodied entrepreneurs to grow their impact and their income. And so Laura is here to talk about, of course, her book and her journey. And I just love, you always talk about, I kind of want to start here, the idea of every body, physical body, having the freedom to live life fully and safely. Let's start there. What does that mean to you?
Oh my goodness. Where to begin within that. So thank you again for the second welcome that you just shared. Yeah. And I want to say, so I actually, I started off as a massage therapist I graduated, got my license in 2005. I did my first coach training in 2008. And I started this whole, experiment, in seeing, I just kept seeing over and over again, clients would come in with this stress in their back and their shoulders, of headaches and this physical complaint. And then they would start talking. And I would listen to their stories and I would literally see and feel what was happening in their body. And I knew that the two were connected. And, of course, for years, I did the whole chase all the modalities and learn all the treatments and figure out, there was this thing that a trigger point. I thought if I could press it, that somehow things would shift. But, and this is what turned me or led me into coaching, was that I realized it was more of just this it's this body-mind connection and this ability for folks to be present within themselves. And, that led me down a path of just being curious. And what I started to see is that, from a very early age, it is taught out of us our ability to be present within ourselves. But then you start to look culturally, you start to look at, systems and structures that exist within our world where we are literally taught to be disconnected within ourselves. And then add to that, personal experiences and traumas and life events that just continues to perpetuate in somebody's life. And, as somebody who was this holistic provider, for me, it was massage and craniosacral therapy. And we have folks who come to us from a variety of backgrounds, not
like a
just
professor.
like a professor. We have a lawyer in the program. We have a dog walker, all sorts of stuff. But it's so interesting that I think people end up in our worlds because they're seeking something. And I think a lot of times we think that we're seeking this external thing. But my theory, my intuition says that we're all seeking connection, right? We live in a world that is disconnected. We're disconnected from each other. We're disconnected from the planet. But that disconnection stems from what we have been taught of how to relate to ourselves. And that simple skill of having the safety, having the support, having the tools, the resources to be present within yourself. I think a lot of the healing that so many of us are feeling and wanting, it has to start there.
Yeah.
Because we can only relate to each other at the depth and ability that we have to relate within ourselves. When we think about, climate change is something that's really important to me. And also, climate change is also there's a lot of, it's not just about the environmental aspect of it. There's a lot of societal and cultural stuff that goes into that as well. But to be able to connect and feel and process all that's going on, like we have to be able to do that. And it starts with embodiment. It starts with just the ability to be present. So, it's funny to me because I will say this and I think you saw me as you helped me write the book. And what I struggled with is like, most people come to me, holistic providers, because they're burnt out, because they want to make more money, because, I think they're sensing this thing. And so many people don't have the tools to access that.
I think when you talk about the disconnect, it really helps people understand why your book is titled The BodyMind Method, why your work is BodyMind Coaching, because it is literally, right, a complete flip. And I'm curious, on this podcast, we talk to people when we do have folks on who have written their book. I'm curious how the BodyMind Method sort of had to come into play, or when you noticed it, even in your writing process.
Yeah, that's such a great question because it was really hard. Here I am teaching this method. The BodyMind Method came from a place that I had this deep realization of what I saw with my clients over and over again, that instead of trying to have this top-down approach to solving their problems and having answers, it was like as soon as they got out of their heads and connected back into their bodies, the answers and the opportunities and the possibilities started to show up for them. They literally acted from the energy of that embodiment. When I stepped into writing the book, that the default method to go back into the head and have this idea of this is what a book is supposed to be, and this is how you're supposed to write a book, and this is, I'm thinking of my family, I have a mug that I'm actually drinking out of today from my grandmother that says, "I'm silently correcting your grammar." My grandma used to read our letters as kids and like point out our grammatical mistakes and send them back to us and be like, "Hey, make sure you fix this next time you send me a letter." So,
Yeah.
so writing a book, and the irony is so much of my message of what I've learned and why I do what I do has come through my grandmother at the same time. But just that idea, like, think about it. I think this is, oh my God, Shane, I've never thought of this. This is such a great example of it. We have this idea of what writing a book and being an author and even writing in general, that top down thing where we get caught up in grammatical mistake or grammar when we feel like we have to, be consistent, write 1,000 words a day from 8 a.m. to 8:30. And, like we think that that's what the process is going to be. And I think so often we get frustrated, we judge ourselves, there's a whole shame swirl that comes in that when you can't show up and do that. But deep inside, there's just this message. There's this thing that wants to be expressed. There's a knowing, there's a truth. And, I don't know if people know this, before I worked with you, I actually wrote a book.
I think that's important to share. Yeah.
That I never published. I literally sat down and wrote an entire book just from a personal journey that I had. And I wrote that for me. That will someday be a part of my next book.
Yes.
But man, that was hard. And then when I came in to work with you and write this book, because we had that embodiment process, that obviously we had a common language of what that embodiment was, because you are a body mind coach. It really wasn't about go and write this book. It was more about, can you connect to the energy of this message and this mission that's asking to come through, and see where it wants to take you. And in the process, I just happened to write a book.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful, because just to, talk about Laura's process, like one, and I did a whole podcast about this, like you are very verbal, and we had to tap into that, because I do think we kept running into, you had this book before, right? And a lot of people come to me or come to work to, want their book, like, I do have all this writing, and that can be great. Like if that is aligned and it's still relevant and feels powerful, like great. And there's sometimes can be like, I've written so many words in so many places that will never see the light of day, right? And like you said, it was just, it doesn't mean it was worthless. It just means it just served its purpose, and we'll see, right? You're really great at reminding people, what is for you won't miss you. And we know that's going to be the case with what you've already written. And it was just the more we kept getting connected to you, and you just kept talking, and we would, meet, and Laura's, in our process together, each person I work with, like it's different for everybody. Like I just remember we would just talk and have questions, and I was just helping capture whatever was showing up. We made sure we recorded, we transcribed a ton. We used content, from videos, that was a big start for this Body Mind Method book. And it was sort of like, again, the thing that was just sort of sitting there, like, how does this get to be easy? And it just dropped in for you of like, I just need to write about what I do and why I do it, and support people, in this really accessible way for understanding this body mind method that you've created. And then once you had that, right, like it's interesting because we started together last year, but like, I feel like this book got written in like the legit bulk part in probably just a few months.
I would absolutely agree with you in that. And I think the other thing that was a big transformation for me, a big aha for me, was I've already written it, because
Right.
I'm a verbal processor, because, I've hosted, I forget, I think like 14 live events. I have tons of recorded video content and and I've done all these, group coaching calls. I'm like, I have said and spoken this book probably 10 times, 20 times over at least. And I think that there's a little bit of an ego check that has to go into that. Again, thinking of like when you go in to write a book, there's this like, oh, I have to make it like super fancy, and I have to say it in a special, eloquent, mind-blowing way, when it was like, I think just having to really humble myself and say that the way that it comes through me, the way that I say it, the way it's expressed through me is good enough.
Yeah.
And that, I laugh. I think I shared this with you. And if my mom listens to this, I will crack up. I just want to love my parents all as well. My parents used to check when I first started using email marketing in, goodness, 2008, way back in the day when I did that. My parents would read over my emails, and my mom always liked to tell me about, again, all my grammatical errors and my misspellings and, just all of that. Anyway, so my parents got a copy of the book, and just a couple weeks ago, my mom said, she's like, that was actually really good. And I was like, did you have to say actually?
You had a little surprise there, Mom.
Yeah. It's like, she's like, that was actually, and I was like, Shayna helped me with the grammar, obviously, but it was, but there was a huge, humble yourself. You don't have to make this harder than it needs to be.
Yeah. And that leads me to I think talking specifically about the book is the way you start it. You start with a letter.
I needed that personal connection to step into the book. And if you can't tell by what I've shared already, technically it is a business book. And it is so much more than a business book. Because I do feel like it is the holistic and wellness community that I believe we are being called to step up and be leaders. And what I saw in that 4-part framework, where that came from was, in my experience, there was a part of me that felt like I had to go and learn the techniques and the trainings and how to help my clients. And that was always one aspect of what I did. And anybody who is a service provider who goes into business on their own, you quickly learn that you also have to learn marketing. You have to learn how to run a business. And it always felt like, I would take business classes and I would work with mentors and coaches and learn all the business stuff. And I loved that. But it always felt like these two things were separate entities. There was how I helped my clients, and there was how I ran my business. And then in the middle of this, like I shared, I saw this whole thing happening with my clients, in that their stress, their pain, their frustration, it was, what was happening in their body was a reflection of their life. And also in the treatment, when they had that parasympathetic response, and then they had the tools of how to actually listen and connect to that, things would shift in their life. Right? I saw that the body was this beautiful activation point for the transformation that they actually wanted in their life. And so the 4-part framework of the BodyMind Method, it recognizes that how you help your clients, how you run your business, how you show up to the process, and all of this, it's all interconnected. You can't separate one from the other.
Yeah.
I don't know how many business groups I've been in where it's fun. It's yay, you can learn the launches, you can learn, the social stuff, but then, well, how does that translate into how you actually help your clients? So the 4 parts of the BodyMind Method, first is about connecting, right? Helping your clients connect body and mind. And I won't go too in depth with all of them because you got to get the book. You got to get the book. But basically, the way you are physiologically wired, and again, this idea of disconnection that so many of us have been in our whole lives, helping your clients connect both body and mind, it has to come through a conversation.
Yeah.
And so we teach and we certify folks in our embodied coaching conversation, and which is a really amazing process that Shayna knows and you get to experience as you write your book with her. So that first part is understanding how to use an embodied coaching framework in your services. The second part of the BodyMind method is what we call empower. And the idea behind this is that how do you actually empower clients to take ownership of their results? And this is where we start to blend business strategy with how you support your clients. For most holistic practitioners, the default way we are taught to deliver our services is generally by trading time for money. You sell a 60-minute, 90-minute session, or you sell a 10-pack or whatever. We teach folks how to create what we call a container of support. Because believe it or not, what actually empowers client results is not you. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think Shayna can talk about this for a while.
I think this for me, when I was, just first understanding this process and getting to know you and all that kind of stuff, this was the game changer. This is where I could start to see, right. And I do come from academia, even in the classroom, even understanding like that's a similar setup, right? Like you come to the class, right? The 50-minute class, 75-minute class, you get the goods. Of course, it's assumed that I'm the one that gives you the goods, which is not the way I teach and not the way I approach things, and it was still there. And then, right, like students did have stuff to go do, but it still had this transactional, not exactly time for money in the same way, but it still had that similar thing. And I always tried to do it differently, but still within that confine. And so when I learned of coaching and that just really started to click with me, then understanding containers of support and how that just open, like physically, I just felt like a big sigh of relief. And so that part of the book alone is such a mind blower. And so many people I've talked to as body mind coaches, to me, that is where you like, once that clicks for you, that's a whole game changer.
Absolutely. And again, you're kind of getting into the next parts of the BodyMind method, because before I get into them, there is, and we talk about this in the book, there's an unspoken agreement when you trade time for money that people are paying you to fix them. And most folks that I know that get into this business do it because they want to help their clients take ownership of their health and wellness. But if you don't realize that, having somebody buy a 60-minute appointment to hammer out a trigger point or to do a workout or whatever, do a yoga flow, they're actually giving you ownership of their health and wellness and expecting you to be the one to give them the answers and tell them what to do. And so it actually perpetuates the very system that so many of us get into this work to break. And it's, now we could probably go into like the patriarchal, capitalistic, like that whole side of things, but which we'll save that for another podcast, because then there's a whole like mindset about it. And then people start comparing themselves on pricing and like, there's so much that happens when you trade time for money. There will automatically be an invisible ceiling in your business, because your time, your energy, and your income are going to be maxed. But what you don't realize is that time for money also limits your clients' results. And so when you shift into this container of support, you're bringing in natural forces that actually empower clients to do the things that they need to do without you having to do it for them. And when you combine that with understanding how to coach, how to help people source their own wisdom, it really creates amazing transformational results in their lives.
It does. I've witnessed it. I've experienced it. Uh, yeah. And this leads to there's something that is so powerful by just stepping into the container, which I don't think is just not possible when you have just a single session. Yes, you can have really fun experiences or even, powerful and important experiences in a short, 60-minute time, but it's like you enter and then you leave, right? And it's gone. And yeah, so this leads to part 3 of the book, which is the activating the change.
Yeah. Well, and I will get into that, but I think people, and this is part of like our culture now, especially being on Instagram. And I know that there's going to be a cute little like blurb that you're going to put on your feed here, right? Like we think that the aha or the awareness is the thing that we're aiming to reach, right? And so when you have that 60-minute session and your client has the aha or the breakthrough, there's this feeling like, okay, I did a good job. They've gotten there, but that's not actually what gets results, right? The insight or the aha, that's just the beginning.
Right.
It's when they actually take it and live it and apply it and have the conversation or, do the thing that they need to do. That's where the transformation comes. And so you have to, the way you support your clients has to incorporate that. Which brings us into the third part of activating it, right? And this is the area where I think so many folks avoid it because it's like the least favorite word in business.
Yay!
Sales. Yeah. Right? Like how many people are out there like, I have all these amazing tools and skills, but nobody's buying them. And it's like, well, are you asking for the sale? Like, are you inviting people to work with you? Sales, we both have a mentor, Laura, right? Sales is love. Sales is a point where it's a point of choice, where you are inviting the person to say, I am choosing to stay in the habits and patterns that I've been in that are getting me these results, or I'm choosing to move forward. I really believe in terms of sales, when especially the holistic and wellness and healing community can start to take ownerships of sales as a part of the healing experience, that's where we are going to make a true transformation. Because right now there's this weird separation that happens of I'm not in it for the money, right? And what is Rachel Rogers quote? Like, if you're above paying rent,
Yeah. She's like, if you are, you're not in it for the money, but unless you're not going to pay your rent, not going to buy food, all that kind of, like, she just calls BS.
Yeah. So there's this weird thing that happens that it's like, I'm here to help people. So somehow I'm going to deny money and think that it's separate and it's evil. There's a lot of healing that happens when you start to embrace sales as a part of the transformational process. Yeah. Because I think where people get into trouble and start to burn out is when they are giving so much to their clients. They're giving the tools, the resources, the extra time. They're doing everything in their power to help and educate their clients on what they need to do to have the transformation. But if the client has not actively chosen that they want it and that they're committed and that they're going to show up to it, and yes, in our world, a practical commitment happens through the exchange of money. If the client is not ready to make that choice for themselves, it doesn't matter what you do for them, they're not going to have results.
Yeah.
So you have, before you go and give all of that brilliance away, you have got to have the conversation of, are you ready to make this commitment? And if so, great. We are going to honor that commitment with this practical exchange of a thing that we call in our culture money. Right. Yeah. So it, and we teach a whole sales conversation within the program. And I know that that's a big game changer for folks.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah. And then part four
is, if you can't tell, all of this, it starts with you, right? Your willingness to do the inner work, your willingness to connect, to listen, to live aligned, right? This is that expand phase of the BodyMind Method, because you are not going to be able to grow and expand your impact without being able to grow and expand yourself. And so it does require you to do the work. to live the work,
Yeah.
to be coached, to be in a container, to do your inner work around money and sales. That is a big one. It's, all of this, so much of what we see with our amazing clients is they know that they are giving more. They know that the value that they provide is so much more than just what they're being paid for. But the work, I think the true work is learning how to receive.
Yeah.
Learning how to receive for something that feels so simple and ordinary and obvious.
Yes. Pot, kettle, here, both of us.
Yes. Over and over again. Like Shayna can hear me talk and be like, oh, there's your book, right? And I can listen to somebody, tell me about what they do in their work. And I'm like, well, here's your container of support. Here's your marketing message. Like it just flows out, right? And it is so simple and obvious.
Yeah. And that's, I think even though obviously this book took work, it was a labor of love. It has been birthed. It definitely had it is so accessible and simple. It has a really approachable way to it. And I'm so glad it's out in the world.
Yeah, and it does come with a bonus course for anybody who's listening.
That's really fun to think about too. And I look at that from both, if you are listening to us and go get this book, we'll have the link in the show notes. Obviously it does come with a course. And as a writer of your book, this was a really cool thing that showed up pretty easy. Like from the start, we knew this was going to be this way for you. And then it's just fun to explore. I think, did that kind of butt up a little bit, Laura, against your, what a book could be or had to be or whatever? Mm-hmm.
So it ended up being a little bit longer than I thought it was going to be. And yeah, I do have I think have, I don't know what the right word is for this. I don't know if it's a more substantial book. I don't know. I have this vision of what my next book is going to be. This one was very much a lot of the trainings and things that have come together through the BodyMind Method. I feel like my next book is going to be more about a little bit more of the personal journey that I think was the process of creating the BodyMind Method. And also, my vision is I am here. I want to reach the healers, the feelers, the caregivers, the folks who have that, that desire to make a positive impact in the world. I want to reach as many of those folks as I can. And if somebody can read this book and take this and implement this and have a business that fills them while serving, while making, an impact in their community, that's amazing.
That's amazing.
So my hope is that it changes how we are taught to work in the world.
I love it. I love the book. I love it so much. We are going to have the link in the show notes. And Laura, how's it been just now that it is out in the world? How has that been?
I feel like I have had this author title sitting there and I'm waiting to actually claim it. So in one way it feels really natural because I feel like I have been embodying that for so long. And for years I was like, I am an author. I wrote a book. It just wasn't published. Now it's official. The funny thing was actually releasing it, it felt so vulnerable.
Yeah.
I was okay with people who I don't know buying my book. There are people in other countries that have bought my book that I'm like, that is insane, right? If you're one of those people, thank you. But it felt super vulnerable for people that I know to read it. My neighbors, they got a copy, my parents, that I was like, oh, those people are reading my book. And the thing is, this also relates to, because we see this all the time with our clients, when our members go and own their role as a coach and really have that identity shift that they are here to be more of a leader and step up. There's this whole thing of new clients, no problem. People I know, people who have seen me in one way, if I change my identity, there's a vulnerability that comes with that. And I think that's true for being an author. Like this is like my life's work. And I hear my ego in my head being like, oh, it should have been more. If that's your life's work, that's it, you know? But I'm also like, we could have transcribed the videos and it would have been twice as thick. You know?
I love the size. I love the look. I love the way it came out. And I think, yeah, like you're tapping on what so many people, once they publish and share it and all of that, like you just don't know what the reach is. I know you've had a new client, you know, like that was sort of the thing. She got the book. She'd been in conversation about coming in to work together with you. And then she got the book and there was just like, okay, like that was just the final sort of seal the deal for her. And I've heard other people say that too. It's just, you don't know the impact that your words can have. And it is powerful. And because of that power, I do think there's lots of things that get to show up, which is why it's great. You're in a container of support to talk through that.
Exactly. Which is, well, and that is the expansion part of it. And now that it's out there, now it's like, okay, in the next book. And I mean, there's also the whole idea of like, and I think you helped coach me through this, is there's this feeling like I have to have it all perfect and figured out. And because this process is still evolving, right? It's yes, it's in this book, but it doesn't mean that this is it, right? This process is still growing and evolving. And, you know, in a couple of years' time, this is probably going to be different. There's going to be different parts of it. I might change the name of some things. And you know, especially I think for the women out there, there's this feeling that we have to have this perfect bow tied around it and the whole thing is complete. And now we can put it in the book where it's going to live on in perpetuity as this one entity thing that is never going to change. And that's just not true. Right. So there was, and I even think that was at the beginning of our process when we started this. I think you sat me down and you're like, Laura, because I had written so much stuff all over the place. You're like, Laura, I think you just need to write this as this is what it is in this moment in time and honor that.
And know that it's going to, like, even as we go beyond whatever we have written, like it still is so, like, that's almost reason to write it and get it out in the world, because there's so many people who that will benefit, right? Even as you are like, this doesn't still feel aligned, and you get to write about that. And you did, we talked about, like, in the conversation of even defining the BodyMind Method, we talked about and explained how you wrote about that as like, this is an evolving thing. Like, you can just be transparent about what it is, which is so great.
Yes. And I'm so grateful for you for being able to write that. If anybody's listening and you're like, you have a book in you, just go talk to Shana.
I was going to say, what would you love to say to someone who is kind of where you were, you know, a little over a year ago, just knowing it's on the, you know, it's in the cards for you to write a book, but it hasn't happened yet. What do you want them to
go talk to Shana? I think that's pretty obvious. Go talk to Shana.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Oh, we could go on and on with all of these amazing things. For anyone who is in any kind of service-based profession where you really want to support people, your people, this is a wonderful book. I think it connects to so many important things. Yes, to business owners, but really just anyone who's in like that leadership service. I think it can be so powerful to just reconsider our own roles in connection with the people that we support, and just what the possibilities are when we start to shift out of some of these, quote, common sense kinds of ways of thinking about, you know, just how we are in the world. So I am grateful for you. I'm grateful for this book. I'm glad it lives now out in the world and beyond, and it's just getting started. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Shana, for this, for everything, really. And and if anybody, go get your copy of the book. And if you're interested in learning about being a coach and being certified, let us know.
Yep. With all the links so you can connect with Laura. Some amazing things are coming up here soon. And in fact, when this show goes live, we'll actually be right before your event. So you want to talk about that real quick, the time off event?
Oh, yeah. So I am hosting a free live event. It's about how to take a month off, how to reclaim your time and unlock unlimited earning potential in your business. So we are going to be, so obviously the BodyMind Method exists in the world. I'm actually going to be teaching on, and I don't even know if you know this, Shayna, there's a process that we teach within BodyMind coaching called BodyMind Goals. And so we are going to be taking traditional goal setting and in true BodyMind fashion, flipping it on its head.
Yep.
And I'm going to show you a different way to approach goals where you're actually putting what you truly desire back in the center, and then how you can design your business strategy around that. So it's a fun process. If you're able to join me, amazing. If you're listening to this after that event, I'm sure we'll still have that available if you wanted to get it somewhere. So
Do what you want. Yeah.
All good stuff. All right. Well, thank you for this, Shayna.
Thank you. Awesome. Thanks everyone for joining us. We'll talk to you next time. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Written Compass. If you are enjoying this content, do me a favor and go and review the podcast. This allows me to share and get these messages out to the people who really need them, who we want to read their books in the future. You can also go and share your thoughts and tag me at @ShaynaHartman_ on Instagram. Again, this is just a way for us to get connected and share the writing love. And if you know that you are ready to write your book, that message that's been burning inside of you for a long time, then I want to talk to you. My team and I want to talk to you. Head on over to ShaynaHartman.com and click Work with Us. From there, you'll see an application to explore and see if writing your book is your next best step.